Welcome in, Dusty Litster and Jeff Hansen. And look, if you've never joined the podcast, because you couldn't have, but you probably joined Jeff and I, well, at least you should have, during the high school football season doing a Red Zone. But this is a podcast really for Jeff and I to be me and Jeff, right? Because Jeff always does stuff with Garrett. I always do stuff with Dane. And now this is really the chance for Jeff and I really just to be us. I like us.
Us is good. Us is good, and this is us. And it's going to be great.
And better than the TV show, This Is Us. I mean, that is absolutely true. So
that show had so many emotions. I couldn't get past season 1 because it was like every bad thing that could happen to any family, all of them happened to that family. And it was just like, man, like I'm not a super emotional guy, but that show made me feel things and I didn't really love it.
You know, I'm one of the biggest Mandy Moore fans you'll ever find. I mean, I lived through Mandy Moore. I mean,
I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, and really easy. That's a really easy thing to be a Mandy Moore guy. But whenever I talked to someone, they said the episode made me cry, and it was like every week. I just can't. I can't get into that. I like to think, laugh, and cry, like Jim Valvano says, but I can't do that every week on a show. That's just too much.
It was brutal. There was no thinking or laughing. It was just crying all the time. Couldn't do it.
Well, see, this is what this is. So Jeff and I are going to be able to go through uniquely in the way that we do things. We want to talk about topical things, obviously within the state of Utah, but we know there's, because of Jeff's influence, which is national, we'll be able to talk to national people about the things that they know. And look, man, you are on worldwide television. You are a regular contributor to BYU TV.
Yeah, I mean, I am in millions of homes across the globe.
Millions
I think I'm on
and millions.
I think I'm in every continent now. I mean, I think I've checked a box on every continent. So, yeah, I mean, I'm an international superstar. Me and Pitbull.
Yeah. You are international. That is you. Worldwide. Let's talk about a few things. So we're going to talk about Utah stuff, things happen locally. And let's talk about the big news today. Because I think this is kind of good. This is like the compliment sandwich. We're going to start off with something good. We're going to hit something ugly because I don't know that anybody else has. And quite frankly, I don't care if they have. I think you and I have a very unique viewpoint of something not so great, and we'll finish with something fun. But let's start first with the big news today that the Larry Miller Group wants to get back into owning sports in the state of Utah. What do they call it? A cotorium? What was that? It was a big word used today. Not a word I'm familiar with.
Way too many syllables for this podcast.
Well, I love the names in there because amongst the sports names in there is Del Murphy. That's it's near and dear to all of our hearts, the Murph. Jeremy Guthrie and Steve Young. Steve Young even threw his name into this whole thing, where they're going to try to bring Major League Baseball to Utah. Jeff, you and I are both big baseball guys. Would you leave the Braves to join Utah baseball team?
I think I would have to leave the Braves because it's a local team. But okay, so most people in the state of Utah, they're fans of a team because they picked a team to be a fan of, right? I did grow up in Georgia. I did live in Georgia. I was there in elementary school during the 90s. My dad, we collected paychecks that were signed by Ted Turner. I mean, I was Braves baseball for a while. So it will be like a little bit of my soul is leaving me, but I feel like I have to support the local team. Baseball's funny for me. Like in the NFL, I can, I cheer for the Jets, but I could find other teams that I kind of like.
I'm not cheering for the Jets anymore. I'm out. I'm out on the Jets until further notice. I want that known right now. That is part of what
it's understandable. Totally understandable. But I could like other teams, even the NBA. I like the Jazz, but I could kind of like other teams. But baseball's different. I like the Braves, and I really hate everybody else. Every team in the league, I hate them. So I think I'll have to have two teams. I think I'll have a team that I like, and it will be this local team, and I'll have the Braves that are really near and dear to my heart, and then I'll just hate everybody else. But I do think I will have to break down the wall of hating everybody and have two teams.
Yeah, I mean, the hard part would be for you, I want it to be an NL team because I'm an Angels fan, right. And as long as we're near contention, we'll keep Ohtani too. I'm very much on that team. Jeff Passan said that today. If Jet says it, I believe it. Because from Jet's lips to God's ears. I mean, that's how it works.
I mean, I believe what he said, but there's a approximately 0% chance the Angels are going to be in contention. So
there you go. First shot fired into the history of this whole thing.
I don't know if that's a shot. That's facts are facts, man. Facts don't care about your feelings. That's what Ben Shapiro told me. They just don't care about your feelings one bit.
You don't want to be part of my lie? Is that what you're saying? You're not going to be part of my lie? You have to be
you don't
part of
get
the lie.
you don't get to have your truth. There's not multiple variations of truth. There's just the truth, and the truth is that the Angels are never going to be in contention. That's just the truth.
Oh, yeah. Well, in my heart, they are. They're going to be in contention. There's 5 million wildcard spots. We got to find one of them. We have to find one of them. There's like 15 of them. But the question is, what name? What's Jeff Hansen's? Do you have one name? Do you have 3 names? Where are you at?
Well, I got a list of names. I've thought about this a lot. I've thought about this for decades, really. Like, what would you name a pro team here? And everybody immediately jumps to like the throwback names with the Bees, right? There's the Trappers, there's the Goals. I think those would be great names. I think they'd be fantastic. If they could work out whatever they've got with Georgia Tech and bring back the buzz, I think that would be awesome too. I had this idea. It'll never happen in today's day and age. It'll never happen for a couple of reasons. But I think that the coolest name that they could be is the 45s. Utah was the 45th state. Be the 45s. They'd never do it because Donald Trump has usurped the number 45 for himself. And also, it's a gun.
Probably copyrighted it. But Nolan Ryan owns the 45 Colts. They're Colt 45s.
Well, yeah, I know. So it won't work, but it would be freaking awesome if it did. That's probably the best name. I don't mind the Bees as long as they get rid of the little clip art mascot guy. I don't love the mascot. I like the SL, like when they wear the SL, the Salt Lake logo.
Yeah.
But the B is terrible. The B looks very minor league, so they can't just be the Bees and keep that. They've got to do something else. Somebody said something different today that I thought was cool. The Snowcaps. I think that's kind of a cool name. It's weird, but I kind of dig it.
Yeah,
but it's probably 2 Rockies. I don't know.
Yeah, that's my thing. It's like I don't want anything to do with anything that could tie us to Denver. Utah is not Denver. Salt Lake City, Denver is like way down here, 45 feet of crap, and then there's Denver. I don't want anything tied that's close to Denver, no matter what our producer thinks about his orange and blue team. But to me, I'm one of those weirdos. I like the Trappers. I mean, it's the Guinness Book World Records, longest winning streak in baseball history. I'd be for the Trappers. I put somewhere, and I know this is such like low-hanging fruit. I've always wanted the Jazz and New Orleans and Salt Lake to make the trade. We'll give you the Jazz if you give us back. We'll give you back the Jazz. You give us the Saints. I mean, that's low-hanging fruit. Just kind of
the Saints is good.
It's kind of fun, yeah. But I think we're both on the same thing. Utah, Salt Lake, or do you do Salt City?
Salt City. Salt City's way better. The other name that I like, kind of outside of the box a little bit, this is just from the brain of Jeff, the Coyotes, but you pronounce it Coyotes, not Phoenix Coyotes. It's the Coyotes. You say it the right way because we're Hicks here in the state of Utah. You say Coyotes, and then you're going to the Yotes game.
You live in Kaysville. Not everybody lives in Kaysville. And I shot coyotes. I shot them. I called them in with the rabbits. Yeah, we took care of business down in Carbon County.
We all have. It's a rite of passage in the state of Utah. That's why our producer still really isn't a Utahan yet. I'm sure he isn't shooting many coyotes.
Never. I mean, he went to the smallest big school in the state in Fremont, but I don't think he's ever fired a gun. I don't know if that's ever happened. Outside of going to a carnival and shooting one of those BB guns, I don't think he's ever shot one.
That doesn't count. Doesn't count.
We might have to fix that. And we're only saying this because he has no audio today. He has no way to defend himself.
We could say anything we'd like.
Now, I know we're kind of in the same group. We see stuff all day long. I love the renderings. I love the idea of where they have it. When they announced that they're going to be moving the Bees out to Harriman, you and I had texted about this. I struggle with that. I know that end of town will actually come back in because when they built Sam Boyd Stadium in Vegas, it was the middle of nowhere. It's no longer the middle of nowhere. And there's that feeling that Harriman won't continue to be way out there. It'll kind of just be part of the valley. But I actually love all the loves where this stadium could potentially be built.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a northern Utah guy, and there's a whole wing of Utah that isn't going to go to games in Harriman. I mean, it's an hour drive, and if you have a regular 7 o'clock first pitch, I mean, you're in traffic. It takes forever. It might as well be in Las Vegas. I mean, truly, it is that big of a pain to get to a game.
Just put it in Tooele. If you're going to do it already, just put it out by the sports park. Just put it there.
It's obnoxious. So just put it way out there, and then at least you can go to Wendover on the way. So I love where it's at because it's quicker to get there. I mean, this is like maybe the sappy side of me. I love investing on the west side of the freeway.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
cited in their press release that they met with the Atlanta Braves. We talked about the Braves. They met with the Braves, who have just built a new stadium a couple of years ago, Truist Park, and then they built what they call the Battery alongside Truist Park. And there's hundreds of businesses and restaurants and different things that are attached right there into the stadium. So it's not just a stadium, and it's not just restaurants that are outside of the stadium. It's all integrated together in one experience. And they talked about that Battery being what they would like to do here at this stadium over there on the west side of North Temple. That would be fantastic for that area of Salt Lake where it's at. I think you would see a lot of money. You would see a lot of people move into that area. I think it would be good, not only for baseball fans, but just for the state of Utah. I think it would objectively elevate the entire area.
I joked about this somewhere else, but I meant it. I like even naming it Rose Park something, right? We're gonna fix the name. Let's fix the name. I think it's kind of cool. Become the Rose Park Wildcats after And I tweeted this and I meant it, that if this actually happens, if this actually comes to pass, the first game they're gonna bring back the Sandlot cast, and you're gonna have Benny the Jet Rodriguez, Smalls, it'll be the whole thing. Might as well we're calling them the Hercules, the Rose Park Hercules. For heaven's sakes.
That's not bad. If they have the smokestacks there, and I think they will,
that's awesome.
So they released their renderings, and I dig the smokestacks. Others don't. Like,
I do
whatever.
Too. I don't get the problem.
I don't get it either. To me, it feels like old time baseball. Like my favorite baseball fields growing up, and I played around the country. I remember playing in Kansas at the high school World Series and playing. This
is how good Jeff is. Jeff was a baseball.
This is how good my teammates were, and I just got to ride the bench as a reliever. But I remember playing in an old abandoned rail yard was the backdrop, and it just felt like America's pastime, right? So it was super cool. So I love the smokestacks. And do you just call us the Isotopes at that point? I mean, does Homer become our actual mascot, and we just totally embrace the Springfield Isotopes?
They are talking about bringing, that whole thing with Bill Gates. And I only know this because my father-in-law is a nuclear engineer, that we might bring the second ever salt reactor in the country, because the first one is in Texas. And I know the person that actually stood it up. So anyway, it could be there. I mean, it would play right out there at the west side.
I like it. I did see one thing that I haven't seen talked about anywhere on the internet. So it's Rocky Mountain Power's land, and I don't know if they're donating it or how they're arranging it. Whatever.
Yeah, I think it's in the easement or something like that. It's kind of like how Sheldon Adelson gave the land to Vegas for the Raider Stadium.
Right. I saw a logo because they're calling it the Power District, which I've never heard. I've lived in Utah my whole life, and they make it sound like that's what we call it. But they have a logo.
It's always been there.
It's always been there, but I never heard it called the Power District. But they have a logo that they're putting on their advertising and their banners right there at the location. And right there, front and center in the logo, right in the middle, are the 3 smokestacks. I don't think that you're getting away from those smokestacks no matter what. No, that's part of it.
In the words of Mike Singletary, can't do it. It isn't happening. You're not going to move them. Though I had another really cool thought in the middle of that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. I guess the next part, before we kind of put this one in, likelihood of this actually happening.
Gail Miller is generally a pretty conservative person. I mean, at least publicly, right? I have no idea what kind of business person that she is, but she normally doesn't. There's not a lot of leaks that ever. I mean, go back to the Utah Jazz, right? When they ran the Jazz, trade rumors were never leaked out of Salt Lake. They generally don't involve the press unless there is a reason to involve the press. I hesitate to think that this is just a bunch of hopes and whims. It feels like this water is towards the end of the row, is what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting thing about this is that, I guess the next question, because I would say out of 10, I put it as 7. I'm really conservative thinking this is actually going to happen. But then the next part is it an expansion team or is the Millers going to buy a team? I didn't know it was so well known there's issues with the Nationals until today. Yeah. I think I had more people send me stuff about the Nationals. I wasn't aware of this.
There's a few teams: the Nationals, the Rays, the A's. I mean, they all are kind of.
The A's are definitely up for business,
right? So there's a few that are kind of homeless, and I could see maybe this group trying to get involved, but to me, it feels like an expansion team. the valuation of of an existing team, even the Oakland A's, right? Like it's billions of dollars is what it's going to cost. That's just what sports teams are going for these days. I think an expansion team, you got to pay $2 billion, which is still a lot of
Yeah.
money, but it's significantly less than buying the Washington Nationals would be. So to me, it feels like expansion team, and we know that Major League Baseball wants to expand, so that's what it feels like. But hopefully it comes faster.
Yeah. All I know is if it comes down to Utah and Las Vegas, that's part of my 7 out of 10. Is that Las Vegas built the stadium they built with all the stuff they built to get the A's so they completely raided the cupboard of Oakland. Then Oakland's a city with nothing, right?
Yeah.
So they got it, whatever. But let's just put this out there: Portland is not in the running if Salt Lake's in the running. Like there's no reason Portland could just bow out right now, like not getting it. Nashville, however, if there's a place I would go visit again.
Nashville is one of the best cities in America. Nashville absolutely could. I think, and we're kind of seeing it with like college football and the Pac-12 and things like this. I think that there is a desire for these teams to get west. There's just like these leagues, I should say, to get west. Yeah. They need more Western presence. Populations are growing in some of these areas. I honestly believe that there could be 2 teams in Vegas and in Salt Lake City. I think that there is the appetite that would support having 2 professional teams that close. I don't think it would be immediately, but I think over time, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I think you're looking at 10 years into the future, right? We're staring into the future and seeing the movement, the migration, even from west to closer to Midwest, and then also east heading west is kind of one of those big things. But either way, I was just so excited when we saw the quick announcement what was going to happen. I was glad it actually did happen. I think that was one of the most important things. And I just waited for Jet Passon to actually release something because that was like, I don't know. It's kind of like you're waiting for the Woj bomb. You're waiting for Passon to actually put it out there saying, hey, this is coming. I guess the next part, how about this? Within the state of Utah, and this is what I was alluding to earlier, Stephen Ashworth. Let's talk a little Stephen Ashworth. Stephen Ashworth transferring is from the state of Utah, a Lone Peak product, leaving Utah State and is in the transfer portal. Does he stay at home, or Stephen Ashworth can be wearing a different shade of blue in a different state?
It's a great question. So he released his, I guess, makeshift top 5 today, right? The top 5 schools that he's going to focus on. And those 5 are BYU, possibly returning to Utah State, Creighton, Gonzaga, and Washington. I don't know if he's been to Spokane or to Omaha, but they're not great. And I get that he's been.
We know he was in Omaha this week. He is currently in
now.
Omaha.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't know if he's been there before.
I've never done the Trump hand before, so I apologize for doing this. If that triggers anybody, I didn't mean to do that. It's never happened before.
I thought it was great. And Omaha is a tremendous, tremendous city that he's in.
It's a tremendous city. It's a great place. Many people say it's one of the best towns in the Midwest. I'm not just saying it. Many have said it.
That was good. I get that he's been in Logan for the last couple of years, and look, I know we're trying to be fair. We're trying to talk kindly about everybody, but I was born in Logan. My family is still in Logan, and there's a reason we got the hell out of Logan as soon as we could. I mean, there's just not very many redeeming things about Logan, and so I get that that's what the bar is right now for Stephen Ashworth, but I just don't see him going to Spokane and going to Omaha and falling in love with these environments that are different. They're not familiar. They're not home. They're not Utah. And I don't know why that would be the experience that he's looking for. I mean, he's different than a 19-year-old or an 18-year-old kid who's just graduating high school, right? He's married. He's got a lot of roots. He's a returned missionary, so he's a little bit older. I mean, there's a lot of things at play here that make home make more sense. And so unless there's some NIL money that just is like a dump truck of cash finds his driveway, and even then, I don't know if that's going to make that big of a difference.
I don't know if that's a move.
Unless that happens, I just don't see him leaving the state of Utah. I think that there's too many factors pulling him home. Go take the visits, go see what you want to see. But at the end of the day, I don't see him leaving the state.
Yeah, I know someone that's texted with him. They didn't ask pointed questions as of what is your plan. I know that they asked him essentially, or just kind of say, hey, best of luck. Hope you find what you're looking for. And he said, thank you. I'm going to do my best kind of thing. Really interesting because I think one of the interesting things for Stephen is that he got recruited twice, right? So out of high school, post mission, and now there's schools on that list that had no
None.
interest. Of all the interests, there were no interest in him whatsoever. The only one that was on that list that was previous to all that was BYU. The question is, and I want to pose this to you because you talked to a lot of guys that make these moves, is the not wanting to be hated by your alma mater factor in choosing not to go somewhere? Because we've seen, and the interwebs aren't everything, right? Twitter's not real world, a real world, but it is
It's a
it's a group of
world.
people. It's a
Yeah.
world. It's not the
Yeah.
world. Well, you've already seen it. Like they already think he was tampered with by BYU in the first place. Does that come to a factor here? At least to you, what you've seen from other athletes, would that be a thing?
No. I mean, maybe for certain individuals, but I think at a large scale, no. I mean, and look at it, right? Look at how many players just. I mean, it's on the football side of things, but even if you go back to like Kyle Davis, right? I mean, he did it as well. There's been a lot of movement from Utah State to BYU over the last couple of years, and so I think players are showing, hey, maybe I wanted to go to BYU initially, and I ended up at Utah State. They're willing to get over whatever feelings are there or whatever feelings there were initially when BYU didn't recruit them for whatever reason or whatever happened. They're willing to get over that and go to BYU in the end. So I don't think that that's a big factor here for Stephen Ashworth. However, I do think I love Coach Sprinkle. I think he was fantastic up in Montana. I think he's going to do a really good job in Logan. I think that there's reason that he could go back to Utah State. It doesn't have anything to do with that feeling of, oh, I don't want to go to BYU and turn my back on people. I think Utah State has a lot to offer. I think Coach Sprinkle's a hell of a coach, and I think that he could really make a compelling pitch that would convince Steven to stay in Logan.
I talked to people around Steven years. I mean, we talk about all the things. So NIL money, I think that's all great. And I think it makes people feel, especially Steven, how valuable am I to somewhere? I think there's inherently which no one talks about because it's fun that college kids are getting paid. That's a lot of pressure. If you're in the NFL or you're some other place making $400,000, they say, oh, it's just $400,000, right? To throw a number out. You take that in college, that's a ton of expectations. And you have a couple of dog games at the Kennel or at Creighton or at UW or wherever. I mean, that becomes a thing. And so there's something to it. But I also know that there's a component where he knows there's a life after basketball. And I know that that's kind of a big thing too. So that becomes a big part of it. But all I say is I'm happy for Stephen Ashworth because I've known that I've got to cover that kid since he was a sophomore in high school, man. And it's a lot of fun to watch these guys live out that initial dream. And now it's his turn to kind of reap the rewards of that of going through the portal. It's one of the great things about the portal.
I heard today, and I haven't verified this, but I heard today that 90 some odd schools reached out to him since he's hit the portal. 90. And even if half of that number is the actual number, 45 schools, it's just an absurd number of schools that want you to come after having no interest, really, realistically had no interest from these outside programs, smaller schools in Utah State when he was at Lone Peak. It's cool. Yeah. It's super cool for Stephen Ashworth. NIL is going to be interesting to see what happens. I do think there's this like unspoken element of NIL, and really this is a message to all of the athletes who are looking at NIL.
Let's do all athlete message because you got this one, I got one after it too.
Well, this is to everybody. So everybody talks about these NIL deals, right? That what you said 400,000, and I think that was even reported publicly that there's allegedly this $400,000 offer from somewhere for Stephen Ashworth. Great. Okay, let's say that's out there. Let's say it's 100% legit. He gets $400,000 on day one. That's fantastic, and maybe that's the role of the collective at whatever this respective school is. That's great. That isn't the cap on what you can get in NIL deals. Like this is like this crazy notion that like, oh, the Royal Blue Collective is the only way that an athlete can get NIL money at BYU, or oh no, Utah doesn't have a collective, so how are they ever going to get money? They can get their own NIL deals. If Stephen Ashworth wants to make $1 million, he can get whatever he's going to get from Washington, from Creighton, from BYU, from whoever that he's considering, right? And then go out, take the money from the collective, take that initial like offering that's out there, then go out and get his own deals. The money is there. And I think that's for these local kids, especially, you become a celebrity, right? When you're that hometown hero, especially at our local schools, You become a local celebrity, even if the collective's offer is not at the value that somebody else's collective's offer is. You can go across the street to the local business yourself. You can call up Encore and hire your own agent. You will make as much money as you're willing to go out and get. And I don't know that those opportunities exist if you take a $400,000 offer from Creighton and then you're a nobody who knows nobody in Omaha, Nebraska. So NIL is layered.
Well, it's layered, and on top of that,
I think people just got to think about it. Yeah, they don't talk about it. They just got to think about it cradle to grave, right? Like the collective is just one sliver of what NIL is.
Well, and it's a Wild West. And because we can never get politicians onto the same platform or on the same wavelength of anything, it's going to remain the Wild West until the whole thing just implodes and someone else takes it over and they centralize it and say, hey, these are the rules. This is how you can get your deals done. It has to be done through a sanctioned agent, which is what professional sports is, right? If you don't have a sanctioned agent, as we've now learned through the Lamar Jackson saga, if you don't have an agent that's approved, you can't get the money. And I think one of the interesting things here too, and I know that I've talked to a lot of people who said, hey, this isn't last year's NIL situation. However, just because they say $400,000 doesn't mean $400,000. Just doesn't. Because they can say $400,000 and then it's going to be that we'll give you $100,000 up front. We're going to give you these appearance fees. And when you get all those appearance fees, then you'll make up the $400,000. You and I both know from experiences with other people that they may stop calling and stop giving you those opportunities if that performance doesn't hit or if the program itself struggles. And if the program itself struggles, then you're struggling along with it because all of a sudden those appearances aren't happening.
Well, these companies, especially from a collective standpoint, where their money's not guaranteed and they're not out making revenue, like everything that a collective can do is contingent on donations. And if donations dry up for whatever reason, or they get a pledge for $1 million from XYZ company, and then that company goes out of business.
We learned from Amber Heard, a pledge is a pledge. A pledge is a
pledge is a pledge.
It is a payment. It's a payment, according to her.
Yeah. Amber Heard, man, she's Looney Tunes.
I learned so much. Yeah.
And so these companies could go out of business, and that $1 million is there, and the collective's not responsible for that. They're not obligated to pay anybody that money. I mean, there's going to be all these outs in all of these contracts. So, I mean, I think players rather have got to be careful when they evaluate these teams and they hear the numbers. But I also think that they've got to be look at a bigger picture than just the number that's in front of you, right? I mean, there are NIL deals from people who are not affiliated with any collective, and they're out there, and they'll pay. Like, people will still pay to get their celebrity endorsements. And if your celebrity status is bigger in the state of Utah, there's value in that, and you need to understand what that value is before you leave the state of Utah, because you may be leaving money on the table, even though you're cashing a bigger check.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. I think it's absolutely a great point. And we've seen through a shared admiration of someone that if you're good enough and you're a certain type, doesn't matter where you are, you're going to be a worldwide celebrity. And and that's just kind of the world we live in. And it's crazy. All right, let's go to this one. This is kind of fun too. Let's talk spring 2024 recruiting class. Maybe we can stick with the state of Utah and what we're seeing, because it's really interesting, because we know right now that it is the show pony season. Right, we haven't even hit the summer, which is the ultimate show pony season. I can tell you, I know of one of the top 2024 candidates right now, recruits, who is not in the state because he's once again on a campus visit, and going to see multiple schools this weekend, and has had more and more schools even reach out to him. So this is that crazy time. But Jeff, you being really tapped into the recruiting season, how big is this? If you're a fan of a certain team, and be able to follow and understand what we're seeing from the recruiting class for 2024?
It's big. I mean, generally April, May, June is one of the busier times on the recruiting calendar. I mean, everybody gets excited for the end of cycle hat ceremonies on signing day, but the bulk of commitments happen right now. I mean, over the course of the next 90, 120 days. It's especially different now. Beginning, I believe it's Saturday is when the evaluation period opens up. So coaches will be able to start hitting the road again and getting out to these high schools and seeing their spring ball and seeing these guys up close and personal on campus. The NCAA finally changed some of the weird rules that, like, you couldn't talk to somebody when you were on campus. And so you just like stood at the end of the field and waved and winked instead. And like, it was weird. They got rid of some of that stuff.
I'm sure that's how that happened too.
I'm sure they followed every rule to a T.
Except for
So
Scott Frost.
coaches,
Scott Frost is the only one that didn't keep that one.
right? So coaches are now able to talk and not, have to be weird about it. So we're going to see more offers. You're going to see more movement over the next, 45 days or so. But then you're going to start to see commitments as these players want to secure their spots. And I think this is something that is vastly under discussed about the recruiting process. You got to secure your spot, right? I mean, you have to. Let's take the University of Tennessee just because they're on my mind. They offer upwards of 400, 500 players every class. They can only sign 25. And even with those rules being abolished now, they're only going to sign 30, maybe at the absolute most. You got to secure your spot. If you are not a top flight, 5-star guy that you get to pick whatever school you want, and you know that school is going to take you no matter what, this is the time to secure your spot in a class. And that's why we see so much movement is these guys who are very good, who are high 3-star type guys that have options. They take their best option today and they try to secure their place in that team's plans before somebody else takes it. And that team says, oh, hey, that scholarship offer, nah, doesn't matter. It's nuts. And this is when recruiting gets bananas.
Well, and I think it's the other part too is the kid has to care of themselves, right? Because even that commitment is a commitment. You can't sign your NLI, right, your national letter of intent, until December anyway. So really what it is securing that spot, but it's also opening up everything else that you can do. And so if you're, for instance, Roger Seliaponga, just because you mentioned Tennessee, and say, hey, I want to play, I would want to go to Tennessee. If I'm Roger Seliaponga, outside of all my other interests within the state of Utah, Tennessee, I think, is just going to be that would be one of the really hard for me to say no to if I was at his age.
Especially
right?
as a Polynesian kid.
Things.
A Polynesian kid with Nico Yamaleava as their quarterback of the future. Like, you could have a Polynesian connection at Tennessee and the SEC. I think that'd be dope, but I'm not Roger
so much fun. Yeah. And I mean, there's a great life there and tons of talent all over the place. And it'd be a fun atmosphere to go play in. So I think that we just see that if you go get that secured, you still have everything else in front of you to make changes. I covered Tate Martell. I watched Tate Martell when I did his first game. UW. By his junior year, it was Texas A&M, and by the end of his senior year, he went to Ohio State, right? And I know it didn't go that great for Tate, but I watched a bunch of guys on that team go through the same thing. Ty John Lindsay did the exact same kind of move, but they always knew where they were going to go. They were two of the top 15 recruited players in the state or the country at that time. But it's the same deal. They knew what they could do because this is one of the few times you're going to get to do this. And with the transfer portal, it's still going to be open to you. And these schools are even less. Yeah, these schools are even less loyal to you because of the transfer portal.
It's true. And you can be less loyal to the school. And that commitment, these schools, man, they put so much pressure on these kids that their commitment means all of this stuff. And then they don't back any of that up in their own stuff, right? They'll cut a kid loose tomorrow if they have to. But they really will try to manipulate these kids. Jake Caressa, you remember Jake Caressa. He once told me a story. The Mountain Crest legend, right? I mean, he played at BYU, but before he played at BYU, he was an absolute legend at Mountain Crest, one of the best offensive linemen that's ever come out of the state of Utah. He told me about his recruitment, and he was being recruited back then by Oregon and USC and some of these other schools, UCLA, Oklahoma. There was a few of them. He said yes to all of them. When all of them pushed for a commitment, he just said yes. And he's like, that's what I learned really quickly is just tell everybody exactly what they want to hear. At the end of the day, you're only going to put your signature on one piece of paper. So just lie your way through it and then sign with one at the end, and you'll enjoy your experience. That's my advice to everybody. Just say yes to everybody. Lie to everybody if you have to, but enjoy the experience because you don't get control. After you sign, there's not a whole lot of control, and you're a nobody. And those coaches, all the promises, all the dinners that they took you out to, all the whining and dining, it's all gone. And now you're just a freshman and nobody cares about you. So enjoy it and lie and feel like you control your life for a little bit. Because once you get into the locker room, the coach controls your life and you have no control anymore.
Hey, the cheerleaders will not be there when you get on campus. It's all of Fugazi. The whole thing's a Fugazi. Fugazi. It's a whatsy, it's a woozy. It's not even on the elemental chart. And the other part too is you got to, take a lesson from your moms, watch The Bachelor, and realize, say, I'm falling in love with you, not that I love you, and you get everyone to fall for you. I mean, that's what Jake Caressa taught me.
That's what
it is just to live the Bachelor. And BYU was the last one, and that's why in the end,
That's why he
BYU
got the
there.
rose.
I know that's right. Yeah,
They didn't get the Rose Bowl, but they got the rose from Jake, and that's what mattered most.
If you don't want to play the game, you'll never get to win it. You know, that's just
Right.
the fun way it goes. All right, let's do something a little more fun. Go ahead.
I'm ready. A little more fun.
All right.
Okay.
All right,
so
ready?
this week, ready. Go ahead.
You got it.
Okay. We're asking ChatGPT to tell us what we're going to talk about. All right. ChatGPT,
All right.
everybody knows who they are. I don't need to explain what it is. Some AI that's going to control the world one day.
Even Kevin Worthen talked about ChatGPT.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows what they are now. And it's funny, ChatGPT came out, and then all of a sudden there was an AI for, like, everything. Like, I'm getting emails now from Google about Bard, and apparently Bard is good. Yeah. It's weird. But anyway, we asked ChatGPT, hey, give us a segment for the show today. And we left it pretty open of just give us a segment to talk about on a sports podcast. That's it. So this is what ChatGPT wants us to talk about today, Dusty. They want us to talk about the funniest and weirdest things we've done for our team. So I'll read it to you verbatim because the robot really controls the show. So this really is exactly the prompt that we have. This topic could feature humorous stories from sports fans who have gone above and beyond to show their support for their favorite teams. The podcast could invite fans to share their craziest game day rituals, weirdest superstitions, or most embarrassing moments as a fan. It could also include celebrity guests sharing their own stories of sports fandom and how they express their love for their teams. This topic would provide a fun and relatable way for fans to bond over their shared love of sports and the ridiculous things we do in the name of fandom. We don't have any interviews. We don't have anybody lined up. This is episode 1. Yeah. We're not lining it up for episode 1. So we'll ask you.
I had someone I told them to wait till episode 3. I had someone, yeah. I mean, just in full disclosure. Yeah.
We gotta wait. We gotta get our feet underneath us. I mean, we still don't really know what we're doing. We gotta figure all that out. So you're our fan today, Dusty. What's the weirdest thing you have done for your team?
Okay, so if I go way back, I'm missing for a team. Okay. This is just for a player. Remember when Jeff Hornacek won the 3-point contest?
Yes, I do. Remember actually. That? Uh-huh.
I made my sister Courtney, who's a year older than me. She had to keep shooting because he was missing, and then she started. And she's a terrible form, right? But she started doing it, started making shots. I made her keep doing it. And that's why,
you made it
in
happen,
my mind, why Jeff Hornacek, yeah, that's why he won. That's why he won the 3-point shooting contest. I made my sister Courtney continue to do a horrible form shot with no basketball to help give a little juju to Jeff Hornacek.
Good
just to win the 3-point contest.
Good for Courtney. Was she mad at you at the end of this?
No, because they won. Because he won. Okay. He won. We're good. Yeah, everything was
so
good.
She was invested in Jeff Hornacek as well. It wasn't just you and then like manipulating her in the background.
No, because we all knew the story, right? The whole touching the cheek as I was saying hi to his kid. So we felt like we were already connected to Jeff because we were all there.
Weirdest.
The other one I have isn't that weird.
I've got a lot of weird ones. First, like anytime there's a BYU basketball game, I don't know why, but my shirt just comes off. It just is what happens. I have no idea how to explain it. I think it's the stress, especially when it's close. It's the stress. All the robes that are confining me. I don't like it. They just come off. But
so the Gonzaga game, you went full Hulk Hogan. Is that what you're telling me? The Gonzaga game.
Well, no, I don't. It's way less appealing than Hulk Hogan. I mean, it really is mostly like just like stress, uncomfortable taking off my clothes, and it hurts everybody who watches it. But the weirdest thing, unbelievably, that's not the weirdest thing that I've done. The weirdest thing, I got to go back to my playing days, and I was in a slump. And at the risk of being canceled on episode 1, I'm going to be very transparent about this story.
You saw the interview with Derek Jeter, and you got a gold piece of underwear.
Well, and I didn't know anything about Derek Jeter at the time, but my coach said, you got to go find a slump buster. And I didn't know what that meant. And so I said, well, okay, I'm happy to do it. I'm like, 0 for 20. Like, tell me what I'm doing. And he said, you just got to go find somebody. We'll put it delicately. He said, you got to go find somebody that you would never, ever want to be with. It can be because you don't find them physically attractive. It could be because they drive you crazy. Like, it isn't just a look superficial thing, but you got to find somebody that you hate, and you've got to do what you've got to do to make that happen. So, well, for the betterment of the team, I guess I got to do what I got to do. So I went out and, she's got to remain nameless.
Don't say the name. Yeah,
No,
don't
no, and in the full spirit of transparency, her life now is so much better than mine. She definitely won this in the end.
because you helped her. It was a little. It was a Jeff Hansen magic
No,
that did it.
no, I don't think
No,
I feel dirty even trying to take any sort of credit for her life because I was just the worst. But I did break out of the slump. I went 3 for 4 with 2 doubles the next game. So, all was well that
hey,
ends well, right?
hey, I coach baseball. That's what all these shirts are from, right? This whole quilt, except for these three right here, run down the middle. When I was
Mm-hmm.
18, we won. We went to Western Regional, and then I coached Helper American Legion for 7 years. And in the state tournament, I only wore those shirts as my undershirt. That was the only time I broke them out was at the state tournament. And we went to in 7 years, we went to 4 state championship games, 4 times.
It's
Freaking
only
Taylorsville
weird
ruined
if
it
it
every time.
doesn't work. Isn't that what they tell us?
Exactly. It's not superstitious. As it put me in a good mood, which got our team to play better.
That's what it
Yeah.
takes. And this particular young lady helped me get into a better mood so that I would play better. It's all part of the scientific psychology of sports.
And in turn, you helped her life get better. I'm going to say it for you.
In turn, she's beautiful. She's got a bunch of kids. She's living like she's got way more money than I'll ever dream of having. And I'm
she's
wearing
not
a size
pre-rich. She's
3X.
rich.
Oh, she's rich. Yeah, there's no pre-rich. She's mowed through the pre-rich category. And I'm wearing a size 3X. I'm bald, and here we are. I'm doing a podcast from our house. So yeah, she definitely came out on top in the end.
Yeah, but you got a swagger belt and to go along with the Slump Buster story. All right, let's go. Let's see how the fun part. How about this one? This week's Marry, Bang, or Kill. Okay, the baseball season continuing, NBA playoffs, or Succession season 4, episode 4.
I have to be honest. I don't watch Succession. I know.
Yeah,
I know. Everybody judges me, but I don't.
I'm
do
not
it.
judging you. I don't judge. I don't judge. You see me make fun of Star Wars people enough. You know that my stance is you can like it. I get it. I won't do it.
I don't have anything against Succession. I've just never found the time. It feels like it's one of those shows I'm supposed to make time for, but like I don't. So Succession, it's an easy kill for me.
Oh,
But I'm also going to kill the NBA playoffs because I really don't care. I just don't. The Jazz are out. It makes no difference to me at this point. I'm really just counting down the days until the lottery. So I don't care. So I'm going to kill both Succession and the NBA playoffs, and I'm going to bang and then marry baseball season. That's what's
I like it
happen.
because you went right where I was going for. I'm marrying baseball season, banging Succession, and I'm killing the NBA playoffs. I have zero. All the cares were even gone beforehand. I mean, it was suck for Victor, and then the Jazz were really good. By the way, can I say I love Lauri Markkanen? I know we're getting a little bit longer on this one. Lauri Markkanen, that dude. I mean, can we just spend 1 second about the good feels of life? When it came out that he was going to do the whole Finnish, military service because he has to, I was like, I wonder what his quote says. But he's like, well, yeah, it is a thing, but it's an honor. Dude, like, you bring me back into the fold. Immediately, it's like, I'm back.
And how different is, life outside of America while we're sitting there arguing with each other about red or blue or donkey or whatever. These guys are required to go join the military and they're happy about it. Like, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. He's Ted Williams, right? Ted Williams, Joe DiMaggio, you name him. And he's like, yep, this is what I have to do, and I'm going to go do it. And he's in modern day. He's not filing a lawsuit. He's not claiming anything. He's like, hey, I'm going to go. And to me, that's like that's the good in life right there, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's super cool. I don't love that he was good on the basketball court because I really want to find Victor Wembanyama in a Jazz jersey. And Lauri really, really hurt our chances at that. So
he really ruined it.
I'm pretty. I'll get over it eventually, but I'm not over it yet.
He put the whole kibosh on tanking for Victor. That really. The only positive was that Steve Cerruti from the Riders Hill podcast had to come out and apologize to him for mocking the fact that he was going to be like, who's to be the up and coming player this year. And Steve Cerruti's like, Lauri Markkanen, don't think so. I know exactly who that dude is. And so then, during All-Star Week, he had to go apologize to him in person.
Yeah, that was worth it. He has played well, and the Jazz were fun this year, but I couldn't enjoy the fun.
Okay, so let's go one more, just because I want to turn a dagger somewhere, right? Pac-12. Let's give our thoughts. Everyone else is giving thoughts about this. Jeff, we've texted about this. That's why I'm doing this. This is really off the cuff. Pac-12 media deal.
Mm-hmm.
This is no bueno. I don't care what anybody says on a certain message board. It's no bueno.
I don't think it's good. I mean, I think there's a couple of ways we could talk about this, and I'm going to skip all of the stuff in the interim, and we're going to get to the end. I think the Pac-12 is going to cobble together a deal that's going to be good enough to get them through 4 or 5 years, and that those schools are going to remain intact. And I think it will be the Pac-10. I honestly don't think they add San Diego State or SMU or any of the other schools, but I think they stay at 10 schools until the Big Ten adds Oregon and Washington. I think that's what happens at the end, but they stay together. Now, in the interim, that's the resolution, and great, they're going to applaud themselves and be happy at the end of the day, but it's going to be ugly until then. The Pac-12 could not have done worse from a PR standpoint than they have done. Like, the damage to the reputation of that conference, to their member schools, it is already done. They are already thought of as a lesser conference than they were even after UCLA and USC announced that they were going to leave. They are already thought of in a lower light, a dimmer light. I don't know what you say, but they are not thought of as highly as they were before then, because they have just foobarred the PR of this negotiation at every single turn. And if firing George Kliavkoff didn't signal the end of their conference and send a whole bunch of fear to all the teams that could leave, then George Kliavkoff should be fired yesterday, because he just could not have got this more wrong than he has got it so far.
Well, the only thing that hurts him even worse is that his right-hand man, Jamie Zinovich, said, peace out. He's the guy that leaves the West Coast Conference to go, and he says, I'm out of here. I think of all the signals of where this has gone, that's got to be one of the most damning one of all the stuff. And it's just it's such a bad look. And here's the deal. You can say, Dusty, you don't like University of Utah, blah, blah. I cover University of Utah. There's players there. Here's the deal. I cover high school sports. I will not give overly impassionate opinions on this podcast about either school. Well, that's not true. I don't want to lie off the offset. But I want local kids, no matter what school they play for, to do well and to make it to the NFL, if it's football or whatever it is. I want them to absolutely murder it. Britton Covey is probably my favorite player I've ever covered. Of all the kids I covered in the state of Utah. So let's get that part out of the way. But this is
I don't
so
like
bad.
Utah. I want that to be clear. I don't like Utah, and I'm not going to pretend to hide behind it.
Yeah.
People can call my opinion.
I'm not hiding
People can say I'm biased, but if what I say comes to fruition, then I get to stick my middle fingers up in the air and say, stick your bias wherever you want to put it, because I'll call it what I think is fair, but I absolutely do not like Utah. And I don't really want to go out of my way to say nice things, but if I have to, then I have to.
Well, see, this is why this works, right? It's why it's a relationship, because I'm willing to say, hey, I'll kind of play the straight man here and kind of pull it back toward the middle. But it's so bad. It's so bad, and look, we got to live, because we're both BYU guys. I'll make sure that's understood. For 12 years, hung on every freaking thing that came out about expansion. Every freaking one of them. And the ones you didn't like, you found a way to act like it was politics and say, well, that person's a moron. There are sourced people. And I know sourced people. And I got pretty decent sources. And here's why I'm not going to mock the Utah stuff, right? Because there's some things that's going to happen that we can find very locally that's going to take place. There's a name mentioned in this whole thing that I'm going to tell you right now to not mock, and that is Ion Sports. I think where Utah ends up and the Pac-12 ends up, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be overly shocked if that's where it goes. But it has been so bad. If anything can go bad, this has gone worse. It's so bad for the Pac-12, and it looks they're like on the same playing level now as the Mountain West Conference. They're right there.
Well, and they're doing it to themselves too, right? Like the fact that Kliavkoff or whoever is allegedly in charge of that conference, the fact that they can't get the university presidents to just shut up or at least talk and say the same thing is like the ultimate illustration of everything that's going wrong. The fact that you've got Taylor Randall, who I think is the most composed of all of the presidents that have opened their mouths, like Taylor Randall is trying to throw some water on the fire and be like, guys, everything's okay, but it's going to take some time. Let's be honest about where we are too. I think he did a great job. But Randall at Arizona, the Arizona State guy, like Oregon State, they're all saying different things. And these guys are supposedly the people who know, right? These are supposed to be the ones like athletic directors. They aren't going to know. So when they speak, it's probably off the cuff. But the university presidents are the ones who are supposed to be in the room with George Kliavkoff. And when they all come out with just these wildly different stories, like, George, what are you doing, guy? Like, you're all over the place. This is not working. And then making up these deadlines, right? Like, these deadlines mean nothing. They're totally arbitrary. The runway is still a year. Like, they've got plenty of time before they have to have a media deal. But they're just hanging themselves by saying, oh, we got to get something done by April 15th. Well, it's not going to happen. So when it doesn't happen, everybody looks around and is like, well, what are those morons doing? They didn't get it done by their deadline. The deadline was make-believe. Nobody needed a deadline. You didn't have to say it. You're making your own death trap. It's like on Hook when the guy is honest with Hook and they throw him in the boo box. Just lie. Yeah. Just friggin' lie. You don't have to be honest. Just lie. Just don't say anything. Just shut your mouth and you don't end up in the boo box with all the scorpions. But the Pac-12 presidents want to be in the boo box. They're trying to put they're racing as fast as they can to get to the boo box. And George Kliavkoff is just watching all of his pirates on his ship jump into the boo box, and he has no control over anybody. It's absolute chaos.
You know what it shows is when out-of-touch people are out of touch, they show they're out of touch by how out of touch they really are. And really what it is people that are surrounded by yes men. Now, this is why you need to watch Succession. Because when you're surrounded by yes men, you never get to know the truth. And all of a sudden, at the very end, you say, hey, someone tell me a joke. And everybody's afraid to tell you a joke because none of them are actually genuine with you. And when you see these presidents come out and say all this nonsense, it's like, do you not realize how this works? You thought that this was 2018. Let me share something with you. The world's changed since the last time you renewed one of these deals. And if you thought you were going to walk into ESPN saying, here's the deal I want, ESPN, and you don't realize that through all of COVID and everything else that's happened, the ESPN is shuttering money, and that you say this, and it's, what is it? Was it a week later? ESPN came out and said, hey, we're laying off and all this stuff that, hey, your rights fees have got to come down. We're not paying this astronomical fees. And you walked right into it. And you thought everything's going to be the exact same because no one has ever been honest with you. And when you're so out of touch, you prove how out of touch you are by being so out of touch. It's such a bad look. And man, when the most educated of us continue to show how bad they are, it just at least a little hope that any educated people are right there.
It really does. It really does. Now, ultimately, I do think, like I say, I don't think that anybody's leaving the Pac-12. I know
you don't.
That I don't think so. At the end of the day,
Colorado Deion Sanders isn't like, hey, give me back to Texas. I'm from Texas. I don't think so. We will raid the Metroplex if you put me in the Metroplex and allow me to play football games there.
I don't think so. Even if the deal comes in as like $10 million lower, I don't think so. Because the Pac-12 has not done anything over the course of the last 15 years that make me think that anybody but maybe Oregon is going to make a move in the name of sports. At the end of the day, everybody in that conference doesn't care about sports. And so, sports lost $15 million in a media deal. I don't think they care. I just don't think they care. They'll say, well, good, figure out San Jose State does it, so why can't you, Stanford? I mean, that's what they'll say. I just don't think they'll care.
But here's the thing. Stanford doesn't care about filling their stadium. They only care about making fun of people at halftime. That's what they care about. They only care about saying here's how smart we are, right? That's all they care about. Same with Cal. Same, I have a hard time with the whole Oregon and Washington's going to go to the Big Ten. I really struggle with that whole thing. Prove anything. Outside of, Oregon might have a chance because they actually fill their stadium. Until you can fill your stadium, I don't want to hear a thing about how great and wonderful and all these different things you are because it's a totally different world. No one's getting the Rutgers deal because it doesn't exist anymore. We're not gaining Rutgers because we think we're getting New York. Everyone's out there now. We all know it.
That has been one of the weirdest things. Like as you watch, I mean, you talk about it as you watch the mental gymnastics that people are going through to agree or disagree with a story. Just be consistent with your gymnastics because people talking about adding San Diego State brings X amount of homes, and that's why it's going to be better. But also, we're going to have all of these streaming deals. Nobody cares about market size if everything's a streamer. It literally doesn't make any difference whatsoever. So just be consistent in your dumb arguments. Don't have dumb arguments all over the place that don't add up. At least draw a straight line with your bad arguments.
Well, here's the thing, Jeff. I mean, so I worked at a TV station. I won't say they're the most amazing person there, but I worked at TV stations. My brother has done it forever, so I understand rating points quite a bit. The Nielsen family ratings have been able to run all kinds of funny numbers for years. Like, it's still Dan Quayle's stuff in the late 80s. It's fuzzy math. Like, you can do whatever you want and bend that story if you want. When it comes to streaming, the reason why Netflix doesn't share a thing with any of its guys, other than you did great, they don't know the numbers.
Yeah, they've taken off reviews. You don't even see reviews on Netflix anymore. Like, you can't even see what your star rating is now because they don't want to show anybody.
They don't want to show it. But what happens is you have a real hard number. And so if you're the Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever number you want to use now, none of that stuff is going to matter. And when a TV station gives you money, their hope is in retrans agreements. So quit calling YouTube streaming. YouTube TV is not streaming. YouTube TV is TV. There's a reason why I named it the way they named it. They pay.
It is internet cable. Right.
Yeah. It is what's it? Equipment-less cable. And so they play retrans agreements. It's not streaming. And so when you get into actual streaming, ESPN Plus, Paramount Plus, Peacock, and all this other stuff, if you can't bring in a number, Apple TV, all that stuff, if you cannot bring in a number, you can't get money. And when that number comes real, this is why I think the Apple thing in MLS is, I don't know how long that's going to last and what the out is for Apple, because they're going to be able to see a real number of how many times does that button hit. And when it's not hit at a certain level, you're not going to get there. So the whole thing is, well, we'll fall back on streaming. You're falling back into the abyss, and you're willing to open yourself up to real numbers. And when those real numbers come, you can't hide. Jeff, you and I get to live in a streaming world here locally. If we go back and I go talk to our friends, KSL Sports, with what we do for high school sports, and say, hey, we're doing great. We pull up a number, and if that number isn't there, you suck. That's just the bottom line of it. And if you can't get people to click on a link, then you can't win. And that's where they sit for. So they think, hey, streaming is this great thing. It is. Don't get me wrong. It is. You're siloing yourself on number one. You're siloing yourself, number one. Number two, that number becomes real. You can't bank on a rating number anymore.
Right. And I'll add a number three. I think it's a misnomer to assume that a streamer is going to overpay because none of the streamers that are real viable options. Well, right. None of the Apples, none of the Amazons are known for overspending in anything that they do. That's why they're Apple and Amazon. This idea that they're going to overpay for sports rights, no, they're not. They're just going to wait until the right sports team comes at a price point they agree with, period. That's what they do with everything.
They don't have inventory. They don't care about inventory. It's a
they don't need it.
They don't care.
Right.
So there's argument that, well, ESPN's got to have the Pac-12 or Pac-12 because they got to fill that time slot. Kinda, they can find ways to. I mean, you can pay $400,000 to the Big Sky. You pay $400,000 to the Big Sky, and you fill it. And you
that's what I was going to say. I had
this
like major like idea that why am I not running a ESPN? Right. Instead of having the Pac-12 and Oregon State versus Arizona fill that late night slot where you know what the numbers are going to be. I mean, we have enough data to know what kind of a draw Oregon State or a late night Pac-12
650,000 viewers. Yeah,
that's what it's going to be. Why not invest in the future of FCS and have one FCS game of the week and go to the entire FCS, all of the conference, because they're all being pillaged right now. They're all desperate for cash. And you could pay a fraction of the cost and you have it distributed among all the FCS schools, and you have one FCS game of the week between the two highest ranked opponents or whatever, and it ends up in that late night, Saturday night slot. FCS teams would jump at that opportunity. Yep. I think it would be super fun. And it would also diversify ESPN's content and get them out of one geographic region. It would maybe be a late night game, but I'm pretty sure that Jackson State is going to jump at the opportunity to play at ESPN on Saturday, even if kickoff is at 11:30. I think it would be a blast. Why are we not doing that? I think that's way more fun than a Mountain West game in that late night time slot or a low-level Pac-12 game at 9 o'clock at night.
Especially when they already show the FCS championship. So you're already going to invest and show it. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're in the black on your money. You're also doing the black on your business. Tom, I'm going to text Tom. I've been meaning to text Tom Wistersill. Say, hey, Tom, Jeff and Dusty got an idea. Let's run this up the flagpole. And we'll take it fee waived. That's what we tend to do all of our business with anyway.
We've got it in. We could get in touch with the Wistersills for sure. Yeah, let's make this happen.
Hold on. Let's go, Tom. Dear Tom, this is Dusty. That's a legitimate start. But no, it's just so interesting. So yeah, I think that's where the Pac-12 again could just show a little bit of their face on this whole thing. They don't have to have it, and that's where this all happened, right? Just unable to read the room and see the board. It's just such a big mistake. So Jeff, let's wrap this thing up. What do you got this weekend? What are you smoking? Because you're a cooker.
I am. I'm getting really into gardening. I turned 34 and I said it's time to plant a garden. So I have.
You're listening to Frogs in the morning, and now you're gardening.
Yeah, it's this is the life I lead now. So I've got 5 cubic yards of soil coming to my house. No, I just garden, just try to live my life. So anyway, I am moving soil into grow boxes and getting ready to plant. It's springtime, Dusty. That's when you plant your seeds.
I grew up in Carbon County. Didn't matter when we planted our seeds; it didn't grow. Alkaline ate them all up, and it didn't matter. But hey, we finally did it. I guess I got one more list. Okay, can we do one more list?
I'm ready.
To steal a line from Most 11. Top 3 baseball movies.
I'm gonna blow your mind. Number 1 is A League of Their Own, and I don't think it's close.
There's another podcast that's supposed to have been done. Yeah.
That it is. Number 2, I'm a big fan of The Natural, and I think I maybe give Sandlot the edge at number 3 over Field of Dreams.
Ooh, okay. So I'm glad. So here's the thing: we don't have any crossover. This is kind of fun. So number 1 for me is Major League. It's my favorite. I mean, outside The Godfather wins, but Major League's my favorite movie. Me and my best friend Kyle Wilson. So Major League, Bull Durham, and Moneyball.
Yeah, Moneyball's good. Moneyball's probably, I should have said Moneyball. I made a mistake.
Bull Durham, though. So you both got Costner, though, because Bull Durham, I mean, that movie is just amazing.
Bull Durham's fantastic. There's a reason that my softball team, we were the Durham Bulls forever, and it's because of Bull Durham.
Okay. I was making sure that wasn't be one of those ones like, I'm not into it. So
no.
Hey, look, hit us up. Let us know different topics we're going to have. Here's the deal. There is a spot for a title sponsor. We will title the show the moment we've got the sponsor, and we got a couple lined up. There's lots of places you can put this. And not only that, I think Jeff would even sell a part of his wall. My quilt isn't moving very anytime soon.
I don't know that I'll sell part of my wall, but I'll allow you to. Yeah, maybe I will. But it's like maybe
put the sign right there.
Corner right here. We got to come up with a name for this thing too. This is a true story, Dusty, and this is what happens. My in-laws, they decided that they were going to name my wife Kimberly. They named her Kimberly Suzanne. They had it predetermined when they went to the hospital that her name was Kimberly Suzanne. And so they went, they had the baby, they named her Kimberly Suzanne. They left the hospital. They spent a few days with Kimberly Suzanne, and they decided she is not a Kimberly Suzanne. She is a Jessica. So they changed her name to Jessica Breck. But they never legally changed her name because it was too hard. You have to go back, you fill out new certificates, you do all this crap. They didn't want to do that. So I got to do that when we got married 25 years later. She was legally Kimberly Suzanne, but had never gone by Kimberly Suzanne because she was a Jessica, and everybody knew it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Well, it gets even, more layered. They blessed her. They did all these things with the church under the name Jessica Breck. When it came time to get married, her church stuff didn't match the marriage license. And they were like, well, we can't marry you. We don't know who you are. And it was easier, it was easier to change her name. No, it could have been. I don't know. I married the one I married. She it was easier to change her name illegally than it was to change her name with the church. So before she changed her name to Jessica Hansen, she had to change her name to Jessica Lockhart so that the church would marry us. And then she had to turn around and change her name again to Jessica Hansen after we got married because she wanted my last name. And getting a mortgage was a nightmare trying to show that this person is who this person is. It was ridiculous.
Oh, my gosh.
So long story short, we didn't name the podcast ahead of time.
Just so you know, because we don't want to name it. And then we get a couple episodes in, and we're like, wait a minute. We're not talking ball. We're something else. A little bit of everywhere, The show to be named later with Jeff and Dusty. I mean, that's really what this is. So, oh, man, that's really good. Jeff, hey, man, we'll catch you next week. But look, we're going to try to do this a couple times a week. Hit us up with any topics. You got ways to get a hold of us at Dusty Lister, at Rakoto10. Hit us up on Twitter, and we love to hear from you. But, Jeff, we'll see you next time, bud.
Thanks, man. We'll see you.